Okay, so hi everyone, thanks for coming tonight. It should be a good evening. We've got Stephen from Moocall who's going to talk you through everything to get prepared for carving. He's got lots to cover, so lots to learn. And we've got Liv, who is my ambassador, so she will talk about herself in a moment. Sorry, my laptop's just made a noise. And Izzy, who will talk about her beef. She has a farm in Norfolk. And then if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end of the session. And if you want to keep your Zooms on mute, just so that there's no background noise, that would also help. So I'll get going. About me, I'm 23 and I'm a vet student at Bristol. I'm based in Essex and so is the business at the minute. If I move back to Bristol, it will probably come with me. I've done lambing since I was about 13. So I've done lots and lots of lambing across all different types of farms, from small holdings to really big units, which has led to me having my own pet sheep. Peggy's on the slide. I also work with my mum, who owns cookery schools across the southeast. So that's really sort of pushed me for my interest in farm medicine, because obviously we talk about food all the time, think about food, cook food all the time, and it really makes me think about the importance of where it's from. Even imports and exports, live exports I know are an issue, so it's really just got me thinking. And from my placements, it's also made me think, you know, there's so much that could be done to help farmers. I think there's a lot of scope within the industry still for some change. So one of my biggest things that I found first of all was colostrum, which is what made me start Restock. I found out that most off-the-shelf colostrums are pretty low in immunoglobulins, so your antibodies. So I decided to stock some really decent colostrum, which then led to lots of other livestock supplies as I was approached by my customers to increase my range and get hold of what they need. So I now only stock things that either vets recommend or farmers that I know would use themselves and have really good reviews on. So that led me on to Moocall as well recently. So we now stock those because they're great. And a friend of mine in Ireland actually uses them himself and he rants and raves about them all the time. So we'll talk about that. I think Stephen will talk to you about that later. And so the long-term aim as well for Restock is to hopefully be able to also supply you all with your drugs for your farms. And I hope to do consultancy services for farms too. So be your farm vet essentially. But that's the plan. If you have any questions about anything, just pop them in the chat and we'll answer at the end. So on to Liv, who is my ambassador.
Hi, I'm Liv. I am a relief milker. I also have my own cows and I help my dad on our beef farm. I have worked with Louise from Restock for about 6 months. I do a lot of things on social media. I have a page on Facebook and a page on Instagram. So I was brought up on a dairy farm. We sold our dairy cows about 5 years ago. At the time I was studying law. I did go on to work in a law firm, but it just wasn't for me in the end. So that's how I sort of landed up relief milking. I absolutely love it. I milk on 2 different farms. It gives me time for my horses and other things that I like to do. Last year I bought 5 Aberdeen Angus heifers, which I keep at home. And then just before Christmas I bought my first pedigree limousine of my own. They're what I'm passionate about. Hopefully I will end up with a few of those at home if my dad will let me. But yeah, we have 100 suckler cows at home, calving from March to June. So we're just starting to get going with our calving. We've had 10 calving in the last 24 hours. It's been slight madness. So yeah, that's pretty much me. We have 2 limousine bulls at home. I'm very much the pedigree side of things and my dad's very much the commercial side, but together we work pretty well. And yeah, I've worked with Restock with Louise and she's lovely and it's a great small business that's growing and growing and growing. So that's me pretty much. I'll pass you on to Stephen.
Now, guys, so I hope you all can hear me okay. So yeah, as Liv and Louise just mentioned there, I suppose the main topics for discussion really throughout this webinar and what we're going to be putting focus on for all you listening is kind of more so on the calving end of things. And I know maybe a lot of you are in the height of calving season, possibly at the moment. Some people may even be finished or coming closer to the end of calving. And I know we have a lot of people that are possibly all year round calving as well. So there's just really take points that you might get from today's webinar that you could help to implement changes on your own farm and in turn improve practices. So just some of the stuff that we're going to be covering, the importance of your pre-calving minerals coming into your calving season, colostrum quality and management. Just as Louise was saying, it's absolutely vital for not even the first few days of a calf's life, but even the first few weeks, and actually having a management system in place. Getting your correct body condition score at calving, like it's one of the most critical really points, and that's why you should be putting a lot of focus in having cows in the right shape coming up to calving, or else you will have problems. The next thing we're going to be looking at is kind of more so around hygiene and cleanliness, just at calving. So, we will touch on animal housing. It's obviously a big thing, and changing and cleaning out pens between calves, depending on your volume. And then one of the biggest talking points really in the past 12 months has been around farm safety at calving time as well. So where cows will be a bit more subject to, I suppose, actually being a bit more wicked coming closer to calving in some cases. So it's just to have your wits about you and what things to look out for. And then finally, just on calving equipment, it's quite an essential thing that you don't be going looking for equipment coming into the end, or even as you have a cow coming close to calving and you can't find, for argument's sake, your ropes or anything like that. It's always important to have all your equipment well prepared in advance. And then finally, I will just touch on Moocall and kind of our mission and what we have done really with the calving sensor since 2014. So just on your pre-calving minerals, I suppose the biggest thing is to bring in through your trace elements and deficiencies such as copper, iodine, cobalt, selenium. They're the most common signs. So you can feed your minerals through the likes of, say, a bolus. You can do it through dusting on silage, or even through the actual feed itself. So if you do actually have a lack on mineral side of things, you're going to have weaker calves after birth. You're going to have cows with retained placentas, and even a case or a high percentage in some cases, depending on how your nutritional values are kept, but even just in regards to stillbirths. So to prevent anything like this occurring, it's always important to make sure you have your pre-calving mineral at least 6 weeks before that cow is scheduled to calve. I know in Louise's last presentation, she did have Dr. Patrick O'Neill that covered a lot of topics just in regards to mineral deficiencies and the solutions, practical solutions, and how to overcome them just through minerals. So just I'd urge you to maybe have a look at that for further in-depth detail. It'd be something that you can check out maybe on Louise's Restock Facebook page or website. The next part is just more so around your colostrum. I suppose going into your calving season, as Louise touched on, your colostrum is most important. So having adequate protein and supplements available. So whether that's through lick buckets in the field, or even if it's through, as I said, dusting on silage or feed to cattle, finding your correct quality of forage to be poor is actually an awful thing as well. So if you have poor quality of silage, poor quality of grass, you're just going to actually implement difficulties around calving coming into labour. So one thing that can help from a protein standpoint is your soya. So if you're able to bring in even soya, if you find that you are having some protein issues, just bring that in for maybe 2 to 3 weeks prior to calving, which can help too. With pre-calving minerals, it comes in various forms. As I mentioned, you have your powder, you have your lick buckets, you have your mead fixes, and then also your boluses. So from a colostrum quality and management, ensuring that the calves are receiving plenty of good quality colostrum in the first 6 hours after birth. So this gives the calf the first big kickstart to life, and it's so important that you get that calf up and going straight away, preferably to the cow if the colostrum is available, but otherwise you would need to supplement it, or even in terms of a calf tube paste as well is something that's quite common. So an intake of 5% of the body weight is worth of colostrum within the first 20 minutes of life. So this is just kind of a gauge for you. So if you have a calf that's around 40 kg, you'll be looking at maybe 2 litres, you know, within the first 20 minutes. And that really helps with them, I suppose, getting up, getting sucking straight away to the cow, and general liveliness and health and well-being. So where you have poor colostrum management facility, or even if it is poor colostrum that you're giving to the calf, we'd opt to go to a substitute powder or paste. Now, something that you can also avail of if you do have cows producing high quality colostrum, if you can take that colostrum and even freeze it for a period of time and then use it where necessary, is also advantageous. So good quality colostrum management is the cornerstone for scour control then as well. So to optimize your calf's resistance and then also to reduce exposure to the infected agents. So the next one is just on body condition. Now, I know it can vary basically between breeds, but for your average suckler cow, you would want to be aiming for approximately a 2.5 body condition score to have a little bit of fat, even just around the tail head is kind of your ideal scenario. So avoid any drastic changes. If you haven't, if you felt that your cow wasn't in the correct body condition coming closer to calving, don't do a drastic change and swap straight into a different feeding routine or anything like that to reduce it or increase it, because that actually will also have a knock-on effect coming into the calving. So any drastic changes, it can cause metabolic disorders and even just general poor colostrum from the cow. From a dairy standpoint, your target body condition is around 3 to 3.5 is kind of what you'd gauge. And just be careful not to over condition the animal either. Just she may have problems really more so around calving. So your body condition score and the management response is to link the 3 factors, the major factors together. So you have good animal health and welfare, you have good animal husbandry, and in turn, what you'll have is a good animal performance from that cow. So just on hygiene, now it's something that can, again, it can vary really much between farms, but I would always, this is one of the biggest things that I would stress whenever I'm talking about, you know, calving pens or anything like that. It's all got to do with your hygiene and keeping animal welfare in mind. So having a clean environment, you know, for the cow that's coming near to calving, whether that means changing the bedding and also cleaning out where that cow has calved. If you're leaving placentas or anything like that, the calf is subject to infection. So it's just to control that, reduce infections and control diseases from spreading. Lime is a great thing to use in calving pens, just for drying up purposes, for disinfecting, and also to keep the fresh straw under newborn calves. Keep your cows' tails clipped and their udders clean. Like, I mean, I've seen it often before where you would have cows coming near calving and they would have dirty tails, and that has knock-on effect having the others being also dirty as well. So it's not ideal for a calf going sucking for the first time and even getting that start to life. As I mentioned, the last thing you want is any dirt even around those areas. So it's very important just to make sure, keep them clean, shave them if needed, and keep the cows clean. Just again, finally on the pens, if you're cleaning out pens, it is important to use disinfectant, but I would kind of urge maybe not to go for a liquid-based disinfectant, because I know if you're putting a fresh cow into that for calving, it can just have, like, I suppose, cold conditions on the floor, depending if you're using a concrete floor, whatever's in there, but it just can not be great for, I suppose, the calf getting up and started if the ground is very cold. On cleanliness, I suppose, again, it's down to the development of the rumen is one of the biggest things for calves. I mean, they're trying to get the best kickstart to life, and through your providing the animal with, say, the likes of hay or even just getting that milk into them straight away, it really does help with the calf's development. So handle calves quietly and carry out procedures such as the budding or the horning as smoothly as possible. And again, keeping that in mind about animal welfare and you know, doing the calves appropriately given their age or whatever the case is. So if you're using creep feeders, just keep the meal changed regularly. Don't leave stale meal lying in creep feeders where calves may be nibbling at it, because look at it, you want the calves striving at the very start, and you don't want them to be subject to even eating poor meal. So good hygiene then, and to conclude on it, is basically your calves' environment to reduce the overall disease levels, and your cleanliness of even artificial rearing equipment is absolutely paramount in that case. So just in relation to animal housing and shed ventilation, I suppose housing and management facilities, they're designed to, I suppose, minimize the amount of stress that you put on a cow and calf, and where the environment is an awful lot easier for the calf to be reared in, it actually subjects to them, and it keeps them well conditioned when they're getting older. So most importantly, you want to have, say, even the calving gates there, you want to have separation and not to overpopulate or overcrowd sheds either. Have sheds draft free. The last thing you want is to have a really bad draft going through the whole lot of calves, or even if you just have a cow and calf in a pen, you don't want that calf getting subject to the likes of pneumonia or cold. So have it well ventilated area. Power washing, I mean, look, as I said, I would avoid power washing sheds around calf, and I would do it like weeks in advance of actually letting calves into the pens, because again, it's going to take a while for that shed to completely dry out. So if you are using any washing facility, do it a lot earlier on, and then just clean the pens then on a regular basis, and keep the straw fresh. So keep a slight slope then. If you have calves, just like in the image here, if there is plenty of calves in a shed, have it at some sort of a slope, so that any urine and anything like that can actually be drawn out onto a channel that maybe at the front of the pen and brought away. Air inlets then above calf height. So that's again coming back to, say, the draft situation. So it's just to completely avoid that from happening. Again, just to conclude on that then, your appropriate space, I know I mentioned it there at the start, but it is really important. Like, you shouldn't have too many calves in the same place, because they just won't thrive, or they won't develop well from that. So just to have adequate space for both cow and calf where you can. So again, just on farm safety. Now, it's one of the biggest things in the last number of years, and we've seen even from a government standpoint that there has been a lot of push put around, you know, trying to make sure farmers have adequate amount of safety measures, particularly at this time of the year. And just to remain vigilant really is the key thing. Around a cow that's coming close to calving, she can be sick, and in turn she can turn on you. She might be the friendliest animal that you have on the farm, but you just never know. You just never know. So potentially any cows that you do feel are aggressive, I would always urge you maybe to try cull them at the end of the season, especially on the likes if you have young children on farm that wouldn't be, you know, too familiar with their surroundings, especially if a cow is coming close to calving, just to keep aggressive cows obviously at bay. Exercise caution then around your heifers. They're a lot more wary coming up to the birth, so you want to make sure to give them space, but also have your handling facilities in place. Only enter a pen then when necessary. So if you feel, for the likes of even a case where you have a cow that is calving and she is progressing very well, it's no harm just to let her calve away. If you feel like, we'd always use, like, say, even if the Moocall calving sensor, for example, when you get your text message, it allows you that time to actually go and observe the cow, see her progression. And the rule of thumb that I would always use is a 20-minute rule. So you should see changes to that calving every 20 minutes. And if there is no changes, that's when you would go to intervene. So normally after you receive a text message, you'd actually observe that animal, see that cow is coming closer to calving. You should see the water bag present, you should see the feet come. This should be a 20-minute cycle, and it's just something to keep a track of it as a hand on. Have a mobile phone on you at all times. I know, look, if you are working full-time farming, you're possibly by yourself, you know, having phone and having that connection If you're down the shed, you're in bother, or there's something happening that you need assistance, the number one thing is to make sure have a mobile on you. I know, look, at coverage can be sometimes difficult in some areas, but at least it's a calling card. If you do need it, you will have it. So it's just to have it on you at all times. For a safe and functional equipment, now I will touch on it now in the next couple of slides, but for the likes of a calving jack, like the last thing you want to do is go into calving and you're bringing up your calving jack and then you realize that there's a problem with it, or there's something not working, or there's something jamming. Like, have all this well prepared in advance of calving, and it's no harm to check after each calving where, you know, if there is things to improve, make sure that they're all correct. And then I suppose that's what I mentioned really regarding having a physical barrier between yourself and a freshly calved cow. So just like in this case, you have your quick release gate, you're able to visually see, make sure that the calf is all right. But if you need to get out, you have an easy way and an easy route of escape. The number one priority in any case is generally to look after yourself first and foremost. I know a lot of times you're going to make sure that the calf is alive and that the calf is up, and you're making sure that the cow is doing her bit as well. But you have to just make sure that you're taking your own safety, because it's ensuring your own safety is the best thing to really invest in there. So as an escape route, so as you can see really in the likes of even this case where a cow's coming closest to calving, like if you don't have a route out, or if there's a case where, say, the gates are awkward to get into, hard to open, this is where you will find bother, you know, if you're coming into a difficult situation. So where possible, I would urge people to have a calving gate. They're an absolute lifesaver in terms of both managing the cow at birth if she needs assistance, and also then for your own safety. And I know there are some government supports maybe available for the likes of a calving gate, so it would be something to look into if you haven't got one already. So try to have help available if you are calving, even a heifer for the first time. It can be difficult, and if there is any problems, it's no harm having that extra hand, even if it is just to help with the calving jack, help with the ropes, etc. And keep cattle calm when you're working with them. Like, I mean, you don't want to be stressing out an animal, so let them get familiar with their environment that they're calving into, even a few days in advance of calving. So, you know, if you're even putting on the Moocall a few days earlier, you want to make sure like that cow is settled into that pen, and then you can let nature take its course. And then the biggest thing is not to put yourself or even a family member or colleague in harm's way, and allow them the best chance if there is any issue to get out. Now, so just on the equipment, you know, one thing that I've seen a lot, like we would have called out on farms, you know, I know we're in COVID times now at the moment, so we won't be doing a whole pile of it lately, but like on a regular basis, our team will be calling out to farms. And the biggest thing that I've ever seen is some farmers calving in quite close quarters, or even having the facilities for, you know, they're quite small for an animal to calve in. So having the space and the room to work with a cow coming close to calving is a huge benefit. And again, if calving at night time, like, look, at more than likely cows tend to wait until the night to calve, but have that lighting there as well. Make sure that either bulbs are changed, that the actual cases, that the light bulb cases are all cleaned before calving season. You don't want to be dealing with a cow in a critical condition and you can hardly see the animal, or you have a lamp or something that you're just working with. I touched on your calving jack not working, so I won't go back through that. If you are using calving cameras, make sure to clean them, make sure to service them, make sure they're working. I know if you are using them alongside the Moocall, there is a great benefit obviously to that, but it's just to have, if you have your calving cameras in place, make sure they're clean so you're not missing things from that side of things. A dedicated washroom facility. Now, I mean, if you have the facility available, you're able to, obviously, if you need warm water or hot water, that's your ideal scenario. Hot water, obviously, to clean equipment, cleaning off the cow's udder if the calf's going suck for the first time, and also cold water then for the initial shock or wake up of a calf if you need to kick life into them, etc. And ear tags is the last thing. So, like, if you haven't got your ear tags ordered pre-calving, you should make sure that you have enough ear tags ready, and that your applicator is also then working too. Now, just on your calving checklist then, so this is just from Louise's website, really, just on various different things that you can actually purchase. And I suppose these are, like, you can take this afterwards and have a look at it, but these are the main things that you should ensure that you have coming into a calving. And if you haven't got them, you know, that's why I kind of urge you to make sure, because the last thing you want is any difficulties and then you don't have the availability of the equipment. So calving ropes, I'd always urge people to have two. Like, whether one goes missing, one breaks, there's various different scenarios. You want to make sure that you have at least two sets of calving ropes. Your calving jack, I mean, as I said, don't make sure that it's not broken going into season, because you're kind of just wasting your own time, really, if there isn't, you know, I suppose a viable solution to it. Having adequate lubrication gel. If you are having difficult calvings or big calves, particularly if you're using, say, the likes of pedigree cattle or embryo transfer, etc., make sure that you have your gels available. Calf jackets are also something I think coming into popularity more so in the past year. But calf jackets are really, really good for, I suppose, getting calves in the correct kind of set up for the first few days of calving and making sure that they're not subject to coldness. Again, around calving, if there is a drafty facility or you haven't got the best of sheds, I would urge maybe around a heat lamp as well. It is something more so with the likes of lambs and things that you would be using, so you might have spares, but it is no harm to have. Iodine spray for calving indoors, you would want to make sure that you're spraying navels then directly after calving, just to avoid any infections on that regard. Your disposable gloves, again, it is essential. If you have carrying something from one animal to the other and you're calving a cow straight after calving another one, or even doing a different job, you're already subjecting that animal to possibly a disease transfer or any other medical reason or health concern. With your calf feed bottle, again, if you're having trouble with, say, a calf standing up, or you're having trouble with a calf getting the best start to life, getting up, getting sucking, it's no harm even having the stomach tube or the feed bottle to get the colostrum in straight away. So if you have to milk the cow yourself to get that milk from her and get it straight into the calf, that's the best thing to do. Then on your calf nutritional boosters, now we also have a sales partner in Ireland that you can look up, and it's just got to do with calf pastes that they actually do. And Louise might have some maybe in her own stock, but it's also, if you don't have the availability to colostrum basically, or you don't have the adequate powder available, these pastes are really good just for getting calves kicked up and started. And then finally, just the Moocall calving sensor. Again, it's a vital aid, really. If you're working at other jobs throughout the day, if you're doing, for example, even at night time, if you have cows coming close to calving, it's absolute critical that you have a detector in place to make sure that you aren't missing calvings and you're able to intervene at the correct time. So I'm just going to give you a brief, because I know I've kind of gone through, covered a good bit of stuff on calving season, but just on Moocall, I suppose we're on the market now since 2014 with the calving sensor. That actually started from a guy who lost, our founder, Niall Austin, who lost a cow and calf back in 2010. And through really 4 years of research and development, we were able to build the calving sensor that it is today. Now, we're currently based in Bluebell in Dublin. And I suppose our team is obviously expanded now in the last number of years, because since we brought out the heat detection system then in 2017. So it's kind of been a roller coaster of a journey, but we have been improving the products really year on year, and really are passionate about I suppose the technology standpoint that we have. So just on the calving sensor, for anyone that hasn't got a calving sensor or not familiar maybe with how they work, the devices you can see here literally attaches to the back of the cow's tail. Now, the easiest way for me to explain it, it's essentially like a mobile phone. And that device attaches to the tail. It triggers a text message approximately an hour before that cow is scheduled to calve. And then it sends a second message then when the cow is deemed to be coming close to calving. So you get 2 alerts then before each labour. So the device actually works on the back of a spinal contraction in the cow's tail movement. And we measure a specific behavioural pattern around the cow's tail And that's how we're able to depict based on tail elevation over a period of time. So when you purchase the device, you actually get, I suppose, one unit typically would do up to 40 cows. It does depend, like if you had 100 cows and you're calving all year round, I still would think maybe the one device would be sufficient. If you feel that you are calving maybe cows quite closer together, if it's compact calving season or you're kind of spring autumn based, I would urge maybe to have at least 1 to 2 devices to cover that. And up to cases then where you have a quite compact calving season, you have several cows calving at any given time, you would be looking at obviously increasing that then further. So I suppose, what do you expect, or what's the things that you'll be looking from Moocall? So what we do is we send a text message, is the main form of communication. So we trigger a text message and that comes through as a standard SMS. So like, for example, if you haven't got a smartphone, there's absolute no worry. The unit will still pick up on any mobile phone at all. The advantage of the smartphone is having the mobile application. And I suppose through the mobile app, what we're able to do is prompt an alert and an alarm to your phone. So say even at night time, or if you're working in a noisy environment throughout the day, you will get an alarm that goes off. And the default alarm, and most of you might be familiar with it, is a loud moo notification. So that has something been one of our unique selling points really for the last 6-7 years of business. And then finally, for people maybe potentially working part-time and you know, they might be working in an office environment, we do have also the email alerts as a secondary feature. So finally, that's really all there is on Moocall. As you can see, the device itself, it literally sits opposite the vulva on the cow's tail. And it's a rechargeable battery. So like the battery would typically last you anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks on a full charge. And that's really, I suppose, when the device runs low or anything like that, you will be notified. In the event it comes off the tail, you will be notified within 20 to 30 minutes that the unit has come off. And also, I suppose it's a peace of mind. Like Moocall at the end of the day is to provide full clarity that you don't have to be checking cows so regularly around calving. And it just implements really the changes in technology in the last number of years, and why we try to strive to make sure our products are delivering that exact point of calving. Like to date, like we've detected over 500,000 calving alerts. We've approximately 16,000 customers worldwide, and it's really through data that we're taking in on a regular basis that we're able to improve the algorithms, improve the accuracy so regularly. So yeah, look, again, if you do have any questions on anything that's just been discussed there, let me know. And I'm just going to pass you over now to Izzy. So I'm just going to stop my screen for a second. I have it here. Louise, you might tell me if you can see that okay?
Yeah, that's all good, thank you.
That's perfect. So Izzy, I'll just hand it over to you there.
Okay, hi. So I'm Izzy. I'm 28 and I've got Highland and Lincoln Red cattle based on my family farm in Norfolk. But as well as the cattle, I've also got a design business on the farm, which I've been running since 2014. And I also work in my local shop. So yeah, life is pretty busy, hence why the Moocall is brilliant for me. So I thought I'd just give you a bit of background about what I do. So my dad started the Highland cattle in about 1989, so 32 years ago. And in 1994, we moved to Batesmoor Farm, so when I was about 2 years old, and he started to grow the fold then. And when I came back from art school in 2014, he wanted to sell all the cattle, he'd had enough. But he said, like, if you'd like to carry on, I'd really like to give you the opportunity to. But I was just starting my business with my best friend, Lara. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? But I didn't have to think twice. I knew I wanted to keep the cows. So what we decided was he sold all the cattle, bar 3 breeding cows and some followers. So I had roughly about 12. And over the last 6 years, I've slowly grown it, and I've got 55 head of cattle at the moment. And I am going to slowly grow it, but I've just got like an emphasis on like the quality of the stock at the moment, just to make it a bit more you know, steady for me while I'm trying to do everything at the same time. So as you can see on the slide, I've always been interested in the cattle and fascinated with helping my dad out. And I think one of my favorite parts of growing up on the farm was like the one-on-one interaction with the cattle. And I think that's where I got really interested with showing the cows. And that's something which I've enjoyed doing like my whole life, and all of our summers were spent showing cattle. And I think that's been so important, especially as I scaled it down to help sell my stock. And with this emphasis on the quality, that's been really important to me. And I've missed it so much. I'm really hoping that next year it'll come back. And so as I mentioned before, I've got Lincoln Reds as well as Highlands. So in 2017, I started with the Lincoln Reds. So that was a big step, because that was like my little imprint on the farm, you know, something a little bit different for me. And it felt like a massive leap at the time. And our design business was really taking off then. And I just thought, oh, I'll just go for it with everything. But it's really good because the studio is on the farm. It does make me a lot more flexible with my time. So at the moment, so with carving going on, it doesn't really matter too much because I can just leave the studio, you know, it's on the yard, so I don't have to walk far to go and check my cows. So, you know, it does, it makes life easier because as everyone knows, nothing ever goes to plan with livestock. I was meant to be in the studio all day today. I think I spent a total of about half an hour in there, just with various things going wrong. So yeah, as I said, you know, I've spent a lot of time showing the cattle and growing up the numbers. But in 2019, I suddenly thought, oh my God, I'm working so many hours. I need to try and make this giant hobby like viable, and I need to do something, turn it into more of like a business, just so that I didn't have like 55 pets basically. And it was just like, it was getting a bit out of control. So I decided, in October 2019 to set up Batesmoor Farm Beef, because I had been selling my beef to pubs and butchers and things like that, which, I mean, it sounds bad. It was easier because I didn't have to do any of the marketing. I literally, you know, sent the animal to slaughter and it was off my hands then. This is a lot more work now, selling all the beef like myself, but it means I've got full control of the marketing, and I get to like share all my imagery with my customers. And when I send my beef boxes, I send like lots of information about how the cattle are reared. And when I do my farmers markets, I get the opportunity to show the pictures. People get to meet me, and if they want to come and pick their beef boxes up, obviously it hasn't happened as much recently, but before they could come to the farm, pick their beef boxes off, and everyone was always asking, oh, please, can I see the cattle? Because it was really important to them to see how the cattle were reared, to see like the calves and just things like that. So they had that real connection with where their food was coming from. I've also used social media a lot. So like on Instagram, like I've got like nearly, I think like over 9,000 followers now. I just try to keep people like up to date with like the day-to-day, like the good, the bad and the ugly, but not too bad. Do you know what I mean? But just like, so people can see what's going on, and they can like have an insight into like our journey and like the story of what's going on. So as I said before, it's a bit of a busy time at the moment. And trying to juggle like the studio and working in my local shop, which is only 3 miles down the road, so it's not too bad. And I also carve inside and outside, just because they're native breeds, they are hardier. And the Highland, the cows, they don't do well being inside. They like to be outside, and it's so muddy at the moment, it's been tricky. So I've had a bit of inside outside. And so the Moocall's been brilliant because I can just, you know, put it on a tail, the cow goes out into the field, and I don't have to worry too much about it. And it also means, like Stephen said before, you know, if you have got other jobs, and also I don't live at the farm, and with COVID, I haven't been able to stay at the farm because obviously I can't go in the house with my mum and dad. So before, it would have meant like so much toing and froing. I only live in the next village, but still through the night, it's a lot of backwards and forwards. But having the Moocall on there means that I have like a peace of mind, like you said, Stephen, and also you don't have that thing, oh God, I'm going to miss something, because like one of my cows, the Moocall went off at like 4 a.m. I went to go and have a look at her. Everything was progressing, you know, it was all very fine. Like you say, I just left her to it. When I went back at 6, the calf was there, and like I didn't have to worry because I knew everything was absolutely fine, and I just happy to, and she was just out in the field. And then when I went in, like a few hours later, it was all perfect. So the Moocalls helped me a lot just because of sort of my multi jobs and things like that. And everyone that I work with is really understanding. And they always let me drop everything. So they don't want me going backwards and forwards from the farm all day, but they're happy. Like if I'm like, oh, the Moocall's going off, they'll let me head off. So yeah, no, it definitely helps a lot. So, here's some of the calves that have been born this year. And as you can see, they're outside and it is quite muddy, but they do so much better. They really do. And then here's some that have been inside. Oh yeah, and this is setting the Moocall up, because I was really worried, Stephen probably remembers, when I was ringing a lot of how to do it, but actually it's so straightforward. It was really easy. And this was a brilliant one on this cow because she'd had a really bad calving the year before. So I was really worried about her calving. And I even kept it on and it showed that she cleansed, because the year before she hadn't cleansed, and that had caused a huge amount of problems, like, infection and uterus and all these sort of things. So I kept the Moocall on and it told me like she calved at 11 and then she cleansed at like 3 in the morning. And because, it notified me that it went off again. So that was really useful as well. So yeah, I hope that's okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for that, Izzy. So I'm just going to stop. I know we have a few questions possibly coming in there. So someone just asked, can we get the presentation later? Yeah, so this is actually being recorded, so we will put it up on our YouTube channel for anyone that did miss out, or even if they had to leave throughout the show. It's no harm. We'll be able to you'll be able to see that at a later date. We just have another question in there. I'll just pull it up here. So just on the calving sensor, just someone is asking just regarding the alerts. So we do trigger out 2 alerts prior to calving. So the first one is typically when we first start picking up on signs of activity. So as I mentioned, the device is actually reading a spinal contraction in the cow's tail. So as that cow comes closer into labour, we actually pick up on that tail activity, and that's when we send the initial text message then to your phone. After you get the second alert, we're basically confirming to you that for the past previous hour, we have had plenty of activity from this animal. So normally that cow would calve soon after you receive the second text message alert. If it's a case that the cow still hasn't calved after that second alert, there's a few different things that can actually come up in place of that. So if it's an event where, say, for example, that cow is like going into labour, or if there's some problems maybe around calving, you'll get your text message then just a bit later on. So yeah, that's just to answer that question that came in there. Okay, and does anyone else have any other questions for myself or the guys? You can just send them through in there.
There was one that came in that said, are there any tips for dopey calves that don't suck? Something, I don't know if you agree, but something all the vets I've ever worked with have actually sworn by is a bit of chocolate on the roof of their mouth.
I just have someone else there from just wondering if we have someone available in Argentina that's interested in the system. Yeah, like the products are available. We are a global company, so they are available in Argentina there as well. So that's not a problem. Does the app work with all versions? So the app itself, it actually does work with, it doesn't matter really what smartphone that you have, the device will sync up and we're able to download that information then straight to your mobile. So yeah, no, it doesn't matter what sort of phone you have, you should be able, as long as if you're able to download Facebook or even Instagram, you'll have no problem downloading the Moocall app. Just in relation, someone's just asking about the calving sensor cost. So the price of the unit, it's £239 for the monitor. And that really comes with your first 12 months of network service, and there's a 12-month warranty that also comes with that. So I suppose the warranty really covers, like, if there's any damage to the unit throughout the year, if you need any parts or any customer support, really, that'll be all then free of charge. Each year, because we're using your mobile phone networks, there is a renewal to keep that SIM card up and running for the additional 12 months. And it also covers your software upgrades that we release then throughout the year, and also any support that's necessary from Moocall. So the renewal each year, it's £109 then to keep that contract up and going.
I think we are offering a discount, aren't we, tonight for
attendees? So yeah, if you wanted to say that one there.
Yeah, we're just doing 10% off the carving devices for you guys on the webinar only, with a code which is MOO10, but I can you can distribute it.
Yeah, so for anyone that is available or anyone that has attended tonight's event, we will be just sending out an email just shortly after the event, where if you haven't got the device or anything like that, you can avail of a discount on it. So that's not a problem. So just a messaging just from Jane there, just how tight does the Moocall need to be on the tail? I suppose like normally our positioning of the unit, you place it opposite the vulva normally on the cow's tail. Like ideally the way you want to place it is tighten it in with your ratchet to a certain level that you can actually twist the device from side to side, but you can't, and without twisting the animal's tail, but you can't pull the device down because the way the rubber gripping is designed. So if you have a Moocall already, Jane, that would be the best way to do that.
We've got a few more in the chat as well. I don't know if you've seen those.
Yeah, you can call away maybe, Louise, if you see them.
So is the Moocall resilient in all weathers, and could it fall off the tail?
Is it okay in all weathers, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of the device, we haven't had a case really due to weather condition that there would be a problem. I suppose the devices itself, it'll still work off, as I said, the exact same behavioural pattern of the cow. So no, I don't think weather wouldn't really affect it. The only thing I may have seen in the past is more so in really hot weather conditions, where possibly there might be some flies or something like that around the cow. You know, that would maybe affect the way that the animal is behaving, just with trying to get rid of flies. You know, if that's an issue. In terms of it falling off, if the unit does, in the event of it falling off, or if it does come off, say it's more subject to fall off really indoors, because, like, for example, if it bangs off a wall or a gate or whatnot, you know, if it falls off, we will send you a text message within 20 to 30 minutes as that the device has fallen off, so you can retrieve it. I know someone just asked there about the GPS on them. We don't have a GPS. This is something that we are working on in trials at the moment. The one thing that we're struggling with GPS is the amount of battery power that a GPS takes. So one thing that a software integration that we developed with the Moocall heat detection system is that if the collar falls off the bull, because the battery pack is an awful lot bigger in that, we're able to incorporate a GPS that triggers if the device falls off. So we're trying to replicate this concept into the calving sensor. Due to size, it is a struggle, but it should be something that we hope to have in the near future.
Okay, thank you. If it falls off, is there a way of making it beep so you can find it easily?
There isn't now. So we've no way of the unit making a noise. Some things that we've seen in the past, and to be honest, I have it on one of my own devices at home, is like if you are calving outdoors, you could get the likes of like a reflective tape. So like off a high visibility jacket, for example, and you can actually stick maybe a couple of strips of that each side of the device. If you are using it outdoors a lot, that's kind of one piece of advice I would give you. So at least then you could go out with a lamp maybe in the nighttime or in the dusk and be able to pick it up fairly straight away, you know.
Okay. And how do you know when to put the Moocall on?
Typically, like, I mean, there's various different ways. The main one is farmer judgment. So, you know, I suppose if you know the cow is coming closest to calving, that's when your optimal time to put it on. Approximately 3-4 days. You can put it on a bit sooner than that, if you'd like. Again, you could work off if you're getting cows PD'd and you have the due dates or the estimated due dates. You can work around them as well. If it's in a case where you've literally really no idea, you haven't a gauge really of what month they should be calving in. If you're using a stock bull and you're not sure maybe when they were inseminated, you can put it on earlier. It's just like after 4 days, we do issue a text message just to take the device off and let the unit reset. And it's more so from an animal welfare perspective, so that the animal isn't obviously neglected around calving and things like that. So that is one thing, and you can put it on obviously sooner. But that's kind of where you go with that.
Okay. And to recharge the devices, should you let the battery empty or charge as needed, or could this damage the unit?
So my advice is, and it's coming back to the mobile phone example, but I would literally use the device like you use your mobile phone. Now, some people may be charging their phone the whole time. It depends on your battery, but like typically you should let the battery go from full to flat before charging it up then again, because I suppose from a device level, it's a lot better from a battery maintenance point of view in the long run. You know, if you, for example, if you have a phone, maybe you have a phone a year and you think initially the battery is great and it lasts a day or two, you know, but in a year's time, you're wondering why the battery's running flat. It's probably more than likely that you're charging it quite regularly, and that you're charging it when it doesn't really need to be charged. So from a battery capacity point of view, cell maintenance, all that kind of stuff, I would recommend to let it go from flat to full and then charge up again.
Okay, I think that's it in the chat. Can you see the Q&A?
Yeah, there's just a couple more just coming in here. Can you wash a dirty sensor? So if the device itself, if it does get dirty, I suppose the best advice I can give you is you can take off the red rubber liner and you can wash that separately in a sink or run it under a tap. In terms of the actual Moocall, I wouldn't recommend running it under a tap. Just in subject, if moisture does get in near the electronics, it can cause it to stop working or can cause corrosion. So I would avoid washing it in that sense. But what I would do, and what our customers are advised to do, is to use either a dry brush or a damp cloth. So if the dirt is on it for a good while, maybe the damp cloth will help to soften that, and then you can just use a brush then just to clean them off then completely. So I just have a question in here from Mick. I had a spell of just trying to see that when cows were shedding their winter coat, the new coat was smooth and you were spraying adhesive on the tail. I suppose it does depend. I wouldn't necessarily say you'd need to do that, Mick, with regards to the Moocall. I mean, the way the gripping is now designed on them, and we have improved it obviously over the years, but the initial rubber liner that we had, I would have seen maybe where you were coming from in potentially using some sort of a spray or even the likes of a vet wrap just as an added gripping. But typically with the new design of the red rubber liner, you wouldn't need to use any sort of tape or adhesive or anything like that. So I just have a question in from Eamon there for you, Louise. Just can you ask Louise, just in repeat dealing, if you have with a slow sucking calf?
Yeah. So I've always been told by lots of vets that a piece of chocolate on the roof of their mouth, and also if you're struggling, you can cover their eyes with something so it's dark, because then they think they're suckling with their mum, supposedly. They're my two best tips I've had so far.
And I just have a question in from Thomas there, just regarding the alarms from the Moocall and if the cow is not calving. So I suppose my advice really, if you are finding that you are getting early alerts or false positives, as we do call them, as I mentioned, there is two reasons for it. So one is the device may be on the tail possibly too long, or it could be causing some sort of irritation, particularly in the likes of heifers, like we've seen it in the past, where she'd be a lot more subject and when she comes in sick into calving, a lot more active around calving. And they can be a lot more nervous coming up to the birth as well. So that's why you would may see some earlier alerts coming through. Also, a big case that we've seen, and we have it a good bit, like even from a customer service point of view, if you find that you're getting a text message and then, say for argument's sake, you still don't deem that that cow is having or is about to calve, normally to us that's possibly a sign of a difficult calving, or that there may be a problem with the labour. So at that point, if you do get your text messages, or you get 2 text messages, we'd always advise to maybe even see if the cow is opened up to handle the cow, see if the calf is coming correctly, and at that point you'll be able to make a lot better decision whether that's an accurate depiction of what's actually happening. Now, so I don't think we've any other questions in. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to throw them in, either for Izzy or Liv. I'm conscious that myself and Louise have answered a good few there, but if anyone does have any questions for any of us, just you can throw them in there. No, so look at guys, thanks very much for joining, and I'm sure look at, I hope you all took something away from tonight's webinar. As I said, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll all be able to get back to you in due course. So yeah, look at, thanks again everyone for joining, and have a good evening.
Thank you.